Hi, this is Ian Kendall, and this is a short video about the 2.5D image manipulation I did for Paul Wilson's film, Our Magic. 2.5D is the technique for taking a flat photograph and adding what's called parallax to it to give an illusion of depth. Now, before I started work on the images for the film, I needed to do a proof of concept for myself. To that end, I found a very old photograph of myself juggling. And the first step was to remove myself, paint in the background so that there was nothing behind me. Next, I dropped myself back in, added the 3 acrylic balls, and then took these layers into After Effects and then started moving the camera around. And the effect turned out better than I had expected. The first main image I got for the film was one of Stephen Bargatze as a child soon after he'd been attacked by the dog. The original photograph was very damaged, very scratched. So the first thing I had to do was clean that up to make sure that as many of the scratches as possible were done. It was the first time I'd done any work like that. The next step was to isolate Stephen and his mother's arm. They were going to come forward in the picture, and then paint behind where Stephen used to be so that when he moves, you don't see a blank space behind him. Once again, put everything into After Effects, and we have this nice movement. The next image is one of the great Rob Zabrecky in his Possum Dixon days. Again, remove Rob from the front, paint in the back wall, and then animate everything. I think this one took me just under an hour to do. A slightly more complicated one was with Michael Amar floating a dollar bill. First thing I needed to do was paint out Michael and the projection screen behind him that was getting in the way. Add Michael in, add the dollar bill in, and then when the animation started, we just added a little bit of movement into the dollar bill to give it a wee bit of motion. The last image I worked on was of Lou Tannen. Astonishingly, this photograph of Lou and Doug Henning is the only one that could be found, and it had been fairly heavily marked up by the New York Times photo editor. The first thing I needed to do was crop the photo and then blank out the background as best I could. I then had to bring Lou in on a separate layer and use the clone tool to get rid of the red cross over him. Then bring in Doug and rebuild Doug's left elbow and his jumper that had been blacked out. And then drop everything else in to give us this rather nice image of the two of them. So I hope you enjoyed that wee look into the techniques for creating the 2.5D images for the film. It's an excellent film. Go find it. Our Magic by Paul Wilson.